I warned you about burnout, and look at you now, still spending every damn hour on that report. You've got a life outside of that document. I can't speak for other facilities, but here, we can afford to relax a bit. We're still doing testing, so we're still getting paid. Our anomalies aren't as dangerous as others are, meaning we can afford to hand in reports several months late. We already know how to contain this thing in real life. The document's just there for those after us, and for the database. That database is not taken away from my free time. Don't let databases tell you what to do. They don't pay the bills around here. You do. You're the man now. SCP Cafe Recap 2019, Week 38. I'm your host, Blue Soul, SCP Wiki moderator, chat operator, subreddit moderator, author, loving husband, dog petter, Cologne aficionado, Tottenham Hotspur supporter. Sick lad. Not doing well today. Haven't been doing well for most of the week, actually. Been dealing with throat issues since about Monday. Things actually seem to be getting worse, which is annoying, and it's also why this show is a little over 24 hours late at least. I'm doing the best I can to sort of power through it. I was on the phone with my wife this morning and had like a little quiet 20-minute phone call, and figured that would be okay, right? 20 minutes, what the hell's that going to do? Afterwards, I could taste blood in my throat. So we'll see how far we get. I'm going to, try to sort of ignore the signs and signals that my brain's sending long enough to put this out there, and hopefully by week 39, I'll be over it. Anyway, we have 15 skips that survived to the week 38 cutoff, and 14 of them in scope, and I only picked 3 of them to discuss. I do have 5 articles and a long boy of the week, but I've got 3 skips I'm going to talk about. My long boy is also a skip, and then I've got 2 tales that we're going to talk about this week as a little break from tradition. One thing that I noticed before we kind of get into the recap proper, I'd been messing around with the format of the show a little bit to kind of see if there were any effects, good, bad, or indifferent, on the numbers, the listener numbers. And it's interesting that after I sort of swapped things around, took the news segment from the front of the show to the back, my listenership went down, like significantly, a solid 15-20%. And I found that really fascinating. I don't know if it's, a direct cause and effect, but that's about the only thing that I've really changed in the last couple of weeks. So we're going to not do that. we're not going to do that right now. We're going to go back to what was working and stick with that. We have the usual suspects at the end of the show, mailbag, have a voicemail apparently that I need to give a listen to, and we'll see what's in there. I also have a giveaway that I'm doing this time around. The MTF Epsilon 11 Nine-Tailed Fox shirt that's available in the SCP Cafe store was a shirt that I was actually a bit reluctant to sell. I didn't really care for it, and it's not to say anything about the design. The issue had to do with the production of the shirt. It wasn't working quite the way I intended it to, and it made for a lot of extra work, and the results were never quite what I was looking for. Last week, I was able to figure out what was going on in my process, and it is now, I'm gonna say it, it's perfect. It looks razor sharp every time, and that was definitely the goal. So to sort of celebrate that, we're going to give one away to the patrons, and did that drawing a little I actually did it yesterday, assuming I was going to record yesterday, and my throat just totally gave up the ghost. So my winner for this nine-tailed fox shirt is Cyan is Not Blue. Please shoot me a message on Patreon with your shirt size. This is the military green, and I believe I have that in men's and women's cuts. So whichever you prefer, shoot it to me, and I will get that in the mail. Now, I also have another one that I am working on this weekend, and that was the custom, the one-of-one shirt that I gave away in the previous month, and I wanted to sort of bring this up because I didn't forget about it, but I've also, due to some issues I had with my setup here, haven't been able to do any new designs, and I've got that resolved. So that's also, I'm going to take some pictures of this when I get it put together. I really like the design that they went with, and I think it's going to look really sharp once we get it done. So, JC, I appreciate your patience. I know you're looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like and getting it sent out to you. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to let you know before we get started, you may notice some changes in the recording, in my voice, as we go through this show, as I will likely have to split this amongst a couple of sessions just to get it to work. So we're going to kick things off. SCP-4778, titled All's Whale That Ends Whale by Dr. Akimoto, who was just the last cut on, I believe last week, that they got me to say, oh no, the goat has diabetes in regards to their work, and it was the last cut, it was last one out of week 37, I believe. So we have an object class of Archon in this one, and that means we could theoretically contain it, but we shouldn't. And then this is also using the anomaly classification bar with the disruption and risk classes, both as a 1 out of 5. You have an image of what looks to be a humpback whale breaching the surface, doing its whole, backflip, gonna land in the water thing. I guess it's not really a backflip. That'd be kind of cool. But no, it's him, breaching, coming up for air, and splashing back down. And the caption reads, an emerging SCP-4778 instance. So we are dealing with some whales. We probably could have inferred that from the title, though. The procedures mention Oceanic Task Force Delta 7 Bay Watchers, and they are tasked with following 4778 pods during their migration to ensure their safety from commercial and civilian interference. This OTF has a 2 nautical mile perimeter sustained under the guise of military-funded scientific research. We also have a research facility located in the breeding grounds in the northern Pacific Ocean. This facility is responsible for the safety of these instances during the breeding season, and all newly reported instances of 4778 are to be safely escorted to this facility, and after evaluation, they are to be introduced into the pod. So this is the sort of procedures you would kind of expect out of an Archon, that we are actually trying to go to lengths to keep it uncontained, but also unmolested by commercial or civilian interests. We also have MTF Epsilon 31 harpoon hunters that are tasked with seeking out and dismantling illegal whaling operations in areas where we suspect the whales habitate. So 4778 is described as an anomalous subspecies of North Pacific humpback whales. These instances are nearly identical to the baseline humpback whale, but possess bioluminescent stripes not found in any other known species. And the way that this is structured, you would at first glance think that's the whole thing, like that's the anomaly, because it's split into paragraphs here. The more important anomalous feature to this is that unlike non-anomalous humpback whales whose diet consists of krill and small fish, their diet, 4778, consists of human waste byproducts and oceanic pollutants. And this causes a significant deviation from normal humpback migration routes, as these pods frequently traverse the Great Pacific Garbage Patch before returning south to warmer waters for the breeding season. And these pollutants that they consume are processed into a slurry consisting of nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and previously undiscovered compounds. I might include something, even if I didn't go really reference that later. I would say, see documentation, blah, blah, because that is the sort of thing we're really interested in and would want to know more about. So I would maybe make mention along those lines. It goes on to say the biowaste slurry is documented as -1, and -1 has shown the ability to help support new aquatic sea life, repairing damage caused by the pollutants removed from the local ecosystem. And the organ or system responsible for this process is currently unknown. And we go from this into a table of tests and results starting in 1984 and ending in 1990. So we've known about this for a while, apparently. This table basically frames the -1 as a very useful thing to have on hand, doing things like increasing the growth rate of plankton and coral, and repairing cellular damage, and increasing stability in an ecosystem, and increasing digestive efficiency, and improving cholesterol and sugar levels, even if consumed by a human. Basically, all signs point to -1 having a nearly universal impact to the good on exposed biology with no negative results. And below this table, we have an image of a folded protein, purple little twirly things, and a chemical compound up front tied to the protein. And this is -A, which we have identified as the mutagen responsible for 4778's anomalous properties. Now, we are in a bit of danger here in giving too much away. And we actually, the author does do a good job of navigating that and coming out safely, because after we identify it, we note that this mutagen, it shares features that we have observed in man-made mutagens, but the methods for producing it were not developed at the time that we discovered the whales, and the time necessary for the evolutionary deviation does not correlate with the availability of the species' food supply. So as a one-off, if you had, one anomalous whale that could do this, that you could possibly chalk that up to be a mutation, just through, sort of the theory of evolution. But if you have this whole ecosystem of them that must have this food source that didn't exist for long enough for it to get to this, this size of a group, then there we have the anomaly. We've explained our understanding of how it works, which is great. And I don't think actually that we do quite enough with that. We have this compound, this protein, that we should theoretically be able to do a lot of good with, and we don't really make mention of that in this piece. But we did sort of, we fully explained it and then kept the anomaly in by, yes, we know how to do it now, but we didn't know how to do it then when we first found these things. So I like that. That was the most interesting thing to me about this piece. We have a discovery log from 1967 from a Foundation listening post in Hawaii, where we overheard some naval chatter, lights from an unknown source, and they go identify 14 bogies approaching to starboard, and we say contact, unknown animal, identify, glowing whales. Repeat, bogies or glowing whales. Well, copy, no action required. This log, and we have one little paragraph and then a notice at the end. We had found a total population of about 35,000 of these whales by 1968, and that's just in the Pacific Ocean. And we have a notice at the very bottom of this thing from the Foundation Parazoology Division, noting that as of 2019, the current global population is estimated to be below 500, with only 153 currently under our direct observation. And due to the beneficial impact that these whales have on the environment and the low disruption caused by its anomalous nature, so that's actually, I like that. I didn't notice that at first reading. The low disruption, we do sort of back reference the disruption class at the top, so that's cool. So it's the stated position of the Parazoology Department. Now, we do say Parazoology Department here, and then division at the top and bottom, so that could be fixed, that drastic Foundation intervention is necessary and warranted to repopulate and preserve the species. 4778 have the ability to help mitigate the immediate threat posed by oceanic pollution, which outweighs the necessity for normalcy in this situation. This is signed by the Director of Parazoology. It is approved by the Ethics Committee and pending approval from the O5 Council, and we leave the article there. So it's interesting because this is a little outside of how the Foundation necessarily operates, and you want to talk about cold, not cruel. This is a really good test of that, of would the Foundation actually do something to increase the population of an anomalous creature because it has an observable benefit to humanity and to the world. I'm not sure. This article says yes. Other articles say no. So you may come to your own opinions just based on how you think the Foundation actually answers that question. We've definitely used skips to assist in containment of other skips that in that way benefits the world, but this is sort of a different proposition, that we're going sort of directly against the contain in SCP, and we are actually, asking the Foundation as a whole to go above and beyond that and actually sort of bend the rules to help save the planet. So it's interesting. It's kind of thought-provoking in that regard, that would the Foundation actually do this? And for being an Archon, this is about as straightforward a one as I've seen. I've seen other articles that show animals sort of gaining evolutionary advantages to live in a more polluted world, and I believe I've even seen one or two that do sort of reverse the effects of pollution. I don't think any of them went with Archon. They went with Thaumiel, and that is perhaps the wrong classification on further inspection, because Archon may actually make more sense here. So it's not super often that I observe a really good use case for an esoteric class such as what we've got here, that we can directly point to and say, yeah, we're better off letting these things migrate. Well, one, they're large, they're humpback whales. Jesus Christ, what are you going to do? And they're, at the time where we probably made this classification, there were 35,000 of them just in the Pacific. So in that regard, this has a really interesting leg to stand on as far as fully justifying the use of an esoteric class. The pace in this is not super great. This log with Naval Command, I don't think adds much outside of just a little bit of flavor, and the pacing of it is fairly flat. We don't have much until the very end, and it's kind of understated that we've only got 153 left. I think I would probably, I may set this in the near future, like 2035, let's say, and also make mention of, with global temperature levels reaching blah, 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 acidification of the ocean, blah, 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 raise the stakes appropriately in that regard, because it doesn't necessarily land when we talk about right now. Like, we know things are not great, but we're saying right now the situation is this bad and we've only got this many left. It doesn't quite land the same way to me as setting it in a near future and saying that, we have a huge situation going on, and it's such that were actually asking the Foundation to go above and beyond and sort of break their own rules as far as containment and preserving the veil and preserving normalcy. So there's more good than bad to this piece for sure. This is still a +1 for me. I did enjoy this. Moving on, SCP-4352, titled Storytime, and this is a collab with Henzoid and Tanhoney. First thing you notice on this page is a yellow header box, and notice from the Foundation Department of Miscommunications. That's been a popular target the last 2 weeks. It notes the following file contains a vital anti-info hazard, so something to keep an eye out for. Any level 4 or higher personnel that have been the subjects of amnestic treatment are required to read this document in full before returning to their duties. So then we have our ACS box. This thing is level 1 unrestricted. An object class of Keter, a disruption class of 0 of null, and a risk class of warning. The procedures are quite lengthy, and note that the file, this SCP file, is to be included in the standard Foundation employment pack, so like a new hire packet, and all new Foundation personnel are required to acquaint themselves with the info contained within. Coded narratives describing the skip are to be disseminated through all available media, including film. This actually says mediums, and the plural of medium is media, including film, TV, and literature, and efforts are to be taken to ensure these narratives reach even severely isolated communities so as to reduce the rate of 4352 attacks as much as possible. So knowledge of this thing apparently prevents attacks, or at least reduces the likelihood. Containment narratives, as originally concocted by FP-194, and now disseminated by the Foundation, are to contain the following narrative elements. So we're basically saying that whatever FP-194 is, they created a containment narrative, and it has the following elements: a protagonist or protagonists, ideally a child or anthropomorphized animal, associated with innocence within the target culture, a physical description of 4352, mention of at least one attack method known to be used by 4352, an attempt by the representation of 4352 to deceive or otherwise mislead the protagonist so as to illustrate its duplicitous nature. So it goes on, in events where radical alteration is required to existing containment narratives so as to adjust it to fit anomalous communities or cultures. That sentence is kind of clunky. Covert Task Force Beta 11, the Bards, is authorized to make any changes as needed so long as the purpose of the containment narrative is still achieved. I feel like this is this whole little 2-paragraph thing. I guess it's just one long sentence here in this paragraph. Could probably be omitted. We could probably say that, we already mentioned that, we have coded narratives disseminated. It's probably safe to assume that if we need to alter it, we're going to, because that's the whole purpose of what we're doing here, is to try to contain the thing. So 4352 is described as a hostile metaphysical entity which normally resides in the collective human psychospace. But is capable of emerging and physically attacking a target once necessary conditions are met. We have 3 bullet points here. The target must not be aware of the skip's existence, it must not be aware of the skip's capabilities, and the target must have broken a societal norm for their culture. And once the skip has selected a target, it is capable of attacking in a variety of ways. These methods are capable of causing significant disruption and destruction, but no incidents have been recorded in which any individuals other than valid targets have been harmed or affected during these events. Methods recorded have included physical attacks via the use of teeth and claws, localized weather manipulation, and limited bodily geokinesis. I'm trying to put together geokinesis as to what that would actually translate to, and that's not immediately clear to me. That may do well with a footnote to dumb it down for people like me. In cases where the skip does not immediately attack an identified target, it has been known to apply variable conceptual camouflage to itself, causing individuals who observe it to identify it as a specific human being familiar to them, despite its physical appearance not actually changing. This camouflage is not impenetrable, however, as specific and focused observation of the skip's non-human bodily configuration can allow an individual to see through it. See through it is probably a little too just plain language there, because you could read see through it as meaning, oh, well, the skip is translucent, I can see through it. I believe you could use something a little more proper there for tone. The skip is believed to have existed primarily within the European psychospace since the early 10th century, preying primarily on farming communities, with attacks gradually lessening as folklore regarding the entity became more widespread, finally all but stopping in the early 19th century due to the efforts of FP194. And then we have a collapsible here that lets us access documentation about FP194, and we finally see FP in this case stands for Foundation Precursor. FP194 is titled The Warning Bell, a small coalition of natural philosophers and occult enthusiasts known to have existed in the 1800s. They were devoted to the identification and extermination of predatory anomalous organisms that existed throughout Europe during the period. They succeeded in the eradication of the Hircocervus and the anti-human unicorn, but their principal goal was the elimination of 4352, and it's believed that the original containment procedures now used by the Foundation were concocted by them and disseminated for this purpose. So that's interesting. We've got this concept of a Foundation precursor, a group that were doing the same sort of things that we get up to in dealing with their own stuff that they've observed around them. So we have an addendum, and the first of two, and this is sort of a test log. They are attempting to expose a member of D-Class to this skip. This D-Class was known to be highly insubordinate and antisocial. They were amnestized of any prior knowledge of the skip, placed in a room with a large amount of food not usually permitted for D-Class, and ordered not to consume it. So, of course, they did, and recording began immediately after. And we have as a dialogue between this D-Class and a Dr. Leste, which I am curious if this is supposed to be like a spoof on Dr. East Lee, which I have also seen in these dialogues in the past. So the D-Class is being a little obnoxious at the beginning of this. You're a fucking idiot to think I wasn't going to eat the food. And the doctor's like, yeah, of course, you did a great job. And so the doctor asks the D-Class if he can sit down, have a seat. And the D-Class, it's your chair, man, do what you want. He says, yeah, of course. And the doctor sits down and places his paws on the desk and says, it's good to get a load off. And the D-Class says, that's nasty, man. And he gestures at the doctor's claws and says, you need to cut those nails, dude. That's disgusting. And the doctor says, yeah, my apologies. I haven't been able to get a lot of free time lately. Can you help me fix my tie? And there's a pause. D-Class goes, you fucking serious, man? The doctor says, yeah, you're under my employment, aren't you? So the D-Class sighs and gets up, and he goes to help the doctor fix his tie, and he has some difficulty locating it. Says, you're like really fucking hairy, man. You need a shave. The doctor says, yes, I do. The D-Class says, and you stink. And the doctor grins and says, yes, I do. End log. Closing notes. Upon the conclusion of the test and the confirmed retreat of 4352 back into the human psychospace, security personnel entered the interview chamber to recover D-2223's remains. The test subject was found to have been opened vertically via the application of sharp claws and had large amounts of stone, wool, and goat embryos deposited within the available cavities. We go from that to a second addendum, and this says it doesn't give you any sort of clue as to what is in this addendum. It simply says access contents in the collapsible. And so when you do, there's a wide image. It's a painting of the Brothers Grimm, and the caption says, they were known associates of the Warning Bell, chiefly responsible for the expanded dissemination of containment narratives during the 19th century. It says, the following is an excerpt from the original containment narratives disseminated for the purpose of reducing 4352's influence, archived for historical purposes. And the quote, there was a dear little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her, but most of all by her grandmother, and there was nothing that she would not have given to the child. Once, she gave her a little riding hood of red velvet, which suited her so well that she would never wear anything else, so she was always called Little Red Riding Hood. End article. So this article, I'll admit, at first, on my first reading, I didn't care for it. I'm like, I hate when we try and do this. We try and give this sort of halfway explanation for things. But then I stopped to think about it, of what this piece actually sort of set out to do. It did a good job of introducing some intentionally jarring text in the dialogue. We've got a good reveal with, if you hadn't already pieced it together, with the Brothers Grimm and the punchline, if you will. And I came around on it. I said, you know what? No, this is actually done pretty well. Everything in it has a good reason for being. And for what we did here, which is to try and co-opt the Brothers Grimm as, Foundation predecessors, this actually did a really good job. So I did enjoy it. It was, after I got over sort of my knee-jerk reaction, I still haven't quite put my finger on what about it, really did that to me. Because on further inspection and further thought, I think this does a fine job. +1. Before we move on here, I have a plug from AIS Mallard recommending Dark Stuff's Vendafriend series that is available in the Canon Hub. It's part of the larger Wonderworld canon and explores Brian's mindset as well as the human side of Wondertainment and its corporate culture. They're pretty well put together, and it's quite a lengthy canon, so if you enjoy it, you're in luck, because there's quite a bit of it to read. All right, moving on. SCP-4967, titled Thaumielvis. Can't make this shit up. And this is by Uncle Nicolini. We've got an image of an Elvis impersonator in front of a little brick half wall with a little gate, looks like a parking lot behind it. And the caption says, SCP-4967 in life, circa 1982. I can tell you by looking at the image that is not entirely accurate. You know how every week I say Cologne aficionado? Well, in the background of this, there's an advertisement for Guess by Marciano, which was a 2007 release. So it is at least that recent. And if we're talking about the new Guess by Marciano, it is from this year. We have an object class of Thaumiel, as you may suspect, and one paragraph of procedures. Plants within the U.S. Department of Reclamation are to conduct all examinations and inspections on the Hoover Dam reservoir and obfuscate the presence of 4967 in the event Akiva radiation levels. That's interesting. That's going back to some of Spike Brennan's works, where the Akiva, the scientific measurement for a quantifiable amount of divine grace. In the event that these Akiva radiation levels within the reservoir exceed 135 centi Akiva, 4967 is to be immediately encased in a lead-lined casket. All right. So the skip is described as the cadaver of Michael Simmons, a former LA street performer and Elvis impersonator, whose remains were dumped in the Hoover Dam, presumably by his killers. Dumped in the reservoir, not the dam proper, obviously. The cadaver has not been observed to decay while in containment and appears to be in perfect condition despite being discovered in 1984. All attempts to relocate the object have failed. Interesting. We don't really explain our attempts there, or, why the thing can't be moved. I don't know if that actually buys anything in the work. I think we could probably have left it alone for what this piece ends up doing. We have an addendum from the Department of we have a couple of departments actually working on this. The addendum also sort of lets us know what sort of canonical timeline we're dealing with here. Following an increase in Tartarian entities manifesting in the Las Vegas area. Remember Sin City from a couple of weeks ago? What was that, week 35? I gotta find that now. Let's see here. I got all my show notes here. Where's Sin City? Sin City is where? We don't know. It's impossible to find. Here it is. I was right. It is week 35. So, we are apparently still in the Sin City timeline here. So the Foundation Department of Applied Force required an increased supply of holy water. This resulted in the exhaustion of Foundation-employed priests. Apparently, creating holy water is a very time-consuming process, so the Foundation opted to seek an affordable long-term source. It's not immediately clear how A connects to B here. So the Department of Tactical Theology, which is perhaps my favorite department in the Foundation, just for its name, they propose several options for the mass production of holy water, including the following involving our skip. The Catholic Church believes that divine intervention plays a hand in preserving cadavers of the righteous. Though we know not and care not how Michael Simmons behaved in life, we know his corpse is, as the priests would call it, incorruptible, and therefore eligible for canonization. It is also known that when objects are touched by a saint, they become holy relics, and if they touch water, it becomes blessed holy water. We, of the Department of Tactical Theology, put forward the following proposition: pay the Catholic Church a generous donation to quietly canonize SCP-4967. Though it will take some time, the corpse should be able to convert the city's entire water supply into holy water. In the meantime, MTFs can just directly siphon water from the dam to use in their operations. This is signed Y. Liner, I like the little nod there, the Abrahamic Sub-Department Lead. We're fleshing out the Department of Tactical Theology here. I love it. So, the other thing I note on here is this is Proposal 4661. Yep. That's Sin City. That's SCP-4661, which we discussed in the Week 35 show about 52 minutes in. So this plan was approved. The Foundation began talking with the Catholic Church representative, and this is in front of the Council of 108. This is also a thing we've sort of brought up a few times, this big, global, this new world order of sorts. So we have a transcript between Agent Sterling and a vicar, a cardinal vicar. So one of the actually, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know shit about the Catholic Church. Anyway, so we have some dialogue between the two. Our vicar looks at the note, says, secret canonization. I know you and yours love to keep secrets, but humor me, why don't you? Our agent says, no need to be coy. I'm sure this was covered in the latest Council of 108 meeting. The UN likes keeping an eye on our activities after all. And the priest says, so the rumors are true. Agent says, yeah, Vegas went to hell. And that's a link to 4661. How interesting. The agent says, I'm sure you're interested in hearing our offer. And the Cardinal Vicar says, let me guess, a donation? We're in no shortage of financial aid, Agent Sterling. The pious of the world are generous, as am I. The agent says, are you saying you'll do this for free? No, my dear. An exchange, a non-financial one. And the agent says, if you're going to ask about that spot in the Sinai, it's not happening. That is a link to Spike Brennan's proposal, by the way, which is sort of the blind spot of God. And Vicar says, no, I know better than to ask about that. I'm not as pushy as my predecessor. And says, my request would be a little more palatable to your superiors. I'd like to examine a particular species of demon up close. The agent says, we've got a bunch of them in containment chambers down below. I can inform Director House you'll require armed backup. And the vicar says, I can handle myself around succubi. All I require is your assistance in busying my handlers and ensuring no word gets out. The agent says, we'll keep it quiet. The Cardinal Vicar says, then we have an agreement. And after being canonized, 4967 has gained the ability to generate holy water via contact with non-anomalous water. The rate of conversion is expected to have affected the entire Las Vegas water supply by 2023. 4967 was reclassified from Euclid to Thaumiel and article. So I already really liked this Sin City world, and so I appreciate more attempts to flesh it out and to sort of envision how the Foundation might try and get shit done in a situation like this. What we have here is a very pragmatic Foundation, right? We've got a problem, we've got a solution. It's not it doesn't seem like the most straightforward thing ever, rather than just dealing with demons via some other means. But hey, we've got this thing that it looks like we could make this Elvis impersonator a saint, and we can't move him out of the Hoover Dam Reservoir for whatever reason, which, again, I think we could probably omit that. But for the purpose of this, he's stuck, and he serves a potential benefit. So he's a Thaumiel now, and now all the Foundation priests get to take a day off. This thing is full of nods to 4661 and to Spike Brennan's proposal, which, there's some common threads in between. So, yeah, I was kind of destined to like this piece given what we had with 4661. I think this is a very worthy addition to that timeline. +1. So, moving on, I have a couple of tales we're going to talk about. The first one is #StormSite19 by Uncle Nicolini, and this is set in the Broken Masquerade canon. You've got a slightly different theme with the logo and secure, contain, protect, and it's got a little registered mark next to it. And the subtitle for SCP Foundation says, Safety Continues in Public. So this is presented as basically an anomalous Twitter timeline, where instead of, likes and retweets, we've got echoes and hums. And this, my only gripe with the format is that I feel like this almost certainly looks better on mobile than it does on the desktop. And this sort of, what we're talking about here, the subject matter, I understand had a really, really short shelf life. Like, we got to get this out now for it to land. So I kind of understand that we maybe didn't have the opportunity to make this really look just as good on desktop as it does on mobile. So this kind of begins with a guy saying, we need to storm Site 19 and plunder the goods the Foundation has kept away from us. The fools over at Parawatch Wiki already banned me for suggesting this. Obviously, they are not interested in seeing what really is behind their doors. And the Serpent's Hand is involved, saying, yeah, you've got our, you have our backing. And Parawatch chimes in and says, yeah, we stand by what we did. And we do not endorse the raiding of the Foundation. There's some conversation back and forth between passers-by saying, yeah, the Foundation's not great, but I wouldn't fuck with them. And one guy chiming in saying his brother's working for the Foundation and he can't tell us anything anymore, but he's willing to bet they've got some crazy things in there. The cure for cancer, maybe there's some Evangelion-style mechs, maybe even aliens, Godzilla. I'm dying to see whatever they've got. Let's storm Site 19. Somebody else chimes in selling shirts, only $20.99 plus shipping, limited time only. The count. Let's look at dates here, because this started on July 12th, and by the 14th, our original commenter says they've already got over 1,900 attendees for the event, and says they kind of regret they didn't have the T-shirt idea first. Deer College has a little news article linked. The UIU from the three Portlands advises citizens not to participate in Storm Site 19. By the 15th, the next day, they've got over 4,000 potential attendees. You've got people like, I want to go, please stream, I'm European. We're 12 hours away. It's kind of crazy. I didn't expect this kind of response. And the Foundation chimes in. Says, hello, all you hashtag raiders. We think it's super cool that you're hashtag keeping it chill and wanting to see the Foundation from the inside, but sorry, we cannot allow you into Site 19. Never fear, hashtag Storm Site 19 fans. If you're really interested in seeing how the Foundation works, we could always use more test subjects. the first response is, I can't believe we live in a timeline in which we were just our fellow kids and threatened by the real SCP Foundation in the same breath, which I think was the line of this piece. So the guy, the organizer, says, hey, Storm Site 19 fans, I need to get serious for a minute. This all started as a bit of a joke, but it got super real out of nowhere. I hadn't realized some people were seriously getting ready to do this, so I just want to call this off officially. Sorry and thank you for understanding. Serpent Hand says, I'm still going. And another guy says, I just spent $4,000 in plane tickets and housing to come out here and raid this bitch. Now you're telling me you're canceling just hours before we actually do it? I'm shaking with anger. And we end this with a link from the Parawatch Wiki, new article by Uncle Nicolini, hashtag StormSite19. It is a link to the article you're reading right now, and we end the article there. This is one of those things where when you do flash fiction, particularly really highly referential flash fiction, you've got to strike while the iron's hot. And this thing is currently at plus 97. So if you try to do this even a month from now, it's not going to work. It would be like trying to do, as somebody pointed out in the comments, like a Firefest thing now. It wouldn't work. So, at this, you've got some people in the comments going, well, I don't like when we've got this really topical stuff on the wiki, and I kind of see it. I don't think that's a totally invalid complaint. Insofar that that's definitely your prerogative, if that's how you want the site to be set up, to not include really topical referential stuff, that's understandable. I feel like this was actually pretty well put together, and we had seen enough of this sort of going on Reddit and on Twitter where people were laughing that, the Foundation's actually at Area 51. So it's not like the idea wasn't in the ether for anybody to take advantage of it. Nico did a good job of this. I think this came together really well. You've got, good, consistent characters throughout it. And, it's one of those, this isn't the deepest thing in the world, but, but it's good. It was entertaining. And, I do recommend actually viewing this, as I always do. This is on the wiki as StormSite19. The hashtag is not in the URL itself. Give it an actual read. See the formatting, see the avatars, see the echoes and hums counts through this piece. This was a +1 from me. Before we get to the last tale, I want to talk briefly about the long boy of the week, SCP-4547, Exterminans by Stormbreath. This is in the AAPA hub, the Ad Astra per Aspera, the Far Future Spacefaring Foundation, and it deals with a planetary expedition where we found a totally shattered world. Just, K-class after K-class after K-class has hit this planet. What started out as an exploration mission becomes a rescue mission after we uncover a little trove of some of the final survivors on this planet, and the work deals with their rescue and how the Foundation can balance trying to get people off this world while also preserving the Veil, and then dealing with their integration into this modern society where humanity's on many planets, and these are actually not the first extraterrestrial species that we have brought into the fold. I really did enjoy it. There are links all over the place to a bunch of different, GOIs, which I'm a little iffy about, like the inclusion of the Fifth Church all this way out, but beyond that, I think everything else is sensible. And all in all, I found this to be a gripping, very fascinating story. Now, last but not least, we have an article, a tale called Thank You, Reviewers. This is by An Epic Fail, and this is, it's not immediately clear what you're looking at because you've got sort of a block quote at the very top with item number SCP-XXXX, which, if you have not written for the site, is the common designation that people will put in their sandboxed piece, in their draft they're still working on. The idea being you don't want to take a number and then have it end up be taken while you're still working on the thing. So XXXX, and then you can just find and replace your X's with the number that you end up going with. And then it says below that, object class safe/Euclid/Keter in parentheses indicate which class. So obviously we're looking at a sort of a template that somebody is working from. And this follows a man named Grafin and his first attempt at writing an SCP entry, but it's happening in universe. And we're trying to sort of bridge the writing process with the Foundation universe and how it could all work in universe. The anomaly is apparently roses that absorb all light, so it must be safe, right? Put object class safe. All right, progress. Back to checking emails. And he apparently submitted this for feedback. He got that far. Said object class, that's it. So he... it was funny. Like, I'm like, oh man, don't do that. They continue working on it, procedures, everything's kind of janky, the tone's not good. There's a lot of internal notes that, are not polished. And then what do I put in for the addendum? And, it's kind of a pointless little addendum. If it shows any changes or goes missing, inform the site director. So this introduces researcher Zin Kiryu, who is sort of the hero as far as critique and feedback goes, our admin Zin. So she looks it over and asks, is this your first official report? Says, yes, ma'am. I'm building upon the framework I've made. And she nods and walks off, and as she's walking off, she says, make sure it sounds clinical in your final draft. We are a professional organization, after all. And we see a little update to the procedures. They look quite a bit better than the first draft. And we sort of separate the timeline here with little line breaks, little horizontal rules that sort of give ends of chapters, if you will. That so Grafin and Zin are talking over lunch. Zin's asking this guy, about himself, and trying to, get around to, what interests do you actually have? The not Foundation stuff. And a little, sideline, I like to draw, and sort of shows a sketch, and doesn't get much of a response. And then she asks, how's your report coming along? And yes, well, would you like to see the draft? I'm not exactly good at explaining it. And she replies, well, if you can't explain it to me, how do you expect me to believe your draft is any better? And says, well, what if I'm not good at speaking? And she goes, I never said you had to verbally express it. If you're capable of writing the general gist of your pitch, that's fine as well. He says, huh? What's the point of writing that if I'll end up writing the draft anyways? And she didn't react, as though she was kind of expecting that answer, and passes him a note, which reads, head to room 115, Ryza's intrasite resources room, ask for the Butterfly Squad roster. So this is a thing out of universe. This is a group of their people that they do critique. This is some of the most thankless work on on the wiki, because it never ends. From a tech perspective, I can do a thing and finish it up, and it'll be good. It'll be done, and the work's done, and I don't have to do it again. Critique, ideas and brainstorming, drafts, this stuff is never ending. And the Butterfly Squad has been sort of put together to help share the load and sort of, keep themselves honest and, doing a thorough job of getting to people. It's a lot of work, but I feel like it is sort of your duty to critique if you can. If you're able to provide useful information, the goal here for everybody is a better wiki, right? So, when you can, do it. So we have another horizontal rule here, and we sort of break to Grafin in this into this room. The room has a sign, and it says, welcome to the roster's meeting room. though I guess you can just call it the forum, like the rest of us. While we are not cruel, we do not coddle, but we are here to help. And Graffin says, I still don't get why I have to come up with a pitch before writing a report. And it's explained to them, we have a lot of reports where the people have no clue what they're writing about. Sure, you might not think you're one of those people, but hey, we live in a world where mimetic concepts can reshape our identities. Zen got tired of us pouring through tons of shitty drafts where the junior researchers kept going off topic or giving tons of redundant crap, and here we are now. And they continue, after all, does it really matter that your walls are 12.34567 centimeters thick? Will the anomaly erupt in fury if we were off by a nanometer? What about containment cells 500 meters tall to contain a humanoid? Or what about drafts with needless filler to make it bulkier than it actually is? And sorry, I got a bit ahead of myself. The point I'm trying to make is people just tend to make mistakes or absurd reports. We're hoping to catch those mistakes early on so it doesn't detrimentally affect the reports or our budget. And he kind of leaves in a huff, scrawls out 2 sentences and walks out. It says, the anomaly is a species of roses that absorb all light. That's it. And the response is, while I acknowledge your frustration with our system for reviewing people's pitches before allowing them to write drafts, is the tongue-in-cheek tone really necessary? And, Christ, I just want to write the fucking draft. I don't understand the need for all this. You're just here to critique my stuff before I hand it in, right? So no, the forum is a volunteer project headed by the Butterfly Squad roster. We were former colleagues and interns of researchers Zen, and we decided to pass on the kindness she showed us to others. All are free to ask for our services, with the caveat that we are free to reject what we deem to be too riddled with holes. Additionally, if we're not confident in your ability to create a draft, we are allowed to request that you give us a concept first. And what we have here is an in-universe explanation of the green light system for pitches, for ideas, and you know, things like that. That we sign our names at the bottom of your pitch upon receiving 2 signatures. It's an indication we've placed our faith in you that you can at least make a semi-coherent draft that'll be well received by whatever peer-reviewed board you happen to land when you submit the piece. And the pitch now looks like it's a subspecies of rose that absorb all light that hits it. Draft will include standard containment protocols akin to containing normal plants discovery, as well as various tests involving the anomaly. And we have another break here. So what's the story involving this, Skip? What? Well, as much as we hate to admit it, our researchers are only human. They too get stressed out by the endless toil our jobs require, and thus, a lot of the time, they don't actually read the entire report. In an attempt to make sure our researchers don't skim the report as much, we encourage the use of stories. Find a way to make it both interesting while not jeopardizing our primary focus. And looks at this new pitch, says, honestly, you've actually got a not half bad plot going on right now, what with all the testing and all. Sure, it might be a little generic, but it's leagues better than what you started out with. And says, wait, so if I already have a story, then why ask me in the first place? Well, if you yourself can't explain it, how can I expect you to actually implement it? Now, run it from the top and explain. So all I have to do is I need to give a linear chronology of events that happened while we tested this thing. Pretty much, yeah. I'll give this a green light. You've slaved over this enough for some self-reflection. I can dig that. Go ask another member of the Butterfly Squad roster to give this a look over. And we have a little pull quote with an addendum, chronological experiment log. We have another break here, and then Graffin is having his work checked out. And it notes that the once pristine document was infested with highlighted marks and comments. They had done a line-by-line analysis, and his draft had been eviscerated. And the response, the conclusion was, overall, this is pretty good. And got a little bit of a surprised look and said, kid, this is your first draft. I don't expect it to be perfect. It is, however, leagues better than the draft you shoved in our faces on the first day you visited the forum. So, you know, Graffin is considering this. And guy gives him another piece of advice. Says, writing is tough. I won't deny it. Shit gets your heart and soul poured into it, torn apart and rebuilt, on and on it cycles. That's how it is. But trust me, I'd rather have a meticulously written out report, even if it takes days or possibly weeks to complete, than something slapped together in the lesser half of an hour. Likewise, the Foundation is the same, although they're more lenient on sloppy drafts since they can't really afford to be picky with the containment procedures. Do remember you're writing for a scientific organization. If they deem your stuff isn't up to snuff, you could lose all your funding for that particular project, and no one wants that. I like the consideration that deletion votes in universe would be like the removal of funding for containing the thing. So after this, there's more and more work going into the draft. They're getting more advice. Fix these clauses. You don't need to inform the O5 whenever something happens relating to the anomaly. You're pretty much never going to see them. Don't switch between points of view. Third person's fine. But as it's going on, he's getting less and less troubled by the reviews and more confident. And more people with time are finding positive things to say about the draft, even if they're just little things. And it got to the point where he began helping the newcomers entering the forum himself, realizing he's been in the same shoes, and reciprocated their cluelessness and repaid it in kind with patience, guiding them on their own journey and imparting what knowledge he had learned to help those who were also struggling, and found it to be a bit exciting. Says, well, your draft's getting better, Julian, I'll give it that. I still feel like some events here are a bit anachronistic, but seeing as we have at least 2 temporal anomalies here, I can't exactly comment on that without a grain of salt. And now we're getting somewhere. A little enforced break by another researcher, getting them to try and relax a little bit. Don't you can't be in that mode all the time and expect the stuff you come up with to be at the same quality as when you're fresh. And we go from there to like a chess game they're playing, and it's all of these things that are being done to try and get them to take breaks and relax, pick this up when you're really feeling it, and that's when things sort of come out the best. And finally gets a response, says, this is pretty good. In fact, I dare say this is ready to be published onto the database. And we have another little break. Gruffin notes that the draft's improving, but also needs to get something off his chest. He's apologizing for being a pain in the ass when he first met the folks in the forum. Says, I was an arrogant prick. I didn't deserve to use the forum as haphazardly as I did. There was no response, which is pretty good. I felt like I was going to get a it's okay at that. What's not what he got. What he got back was, well, as long as you've reflected on your actions. And said, well, we're going to be colleagues for the foreseeable future. It wouldn't be ideal for us to be working together if we held a grudge over something stupid, right? And that's not really an apology or reconciliation, but sort of laying out you did, we know, it's going to be okay. And points at the director and says, there's someone you should save your apologies for. And we get towards the end of this thing as the article is submitted and approved, and notes it's one of thousands, yes, but it was his first and definitely not his last. And the senior researcher says, only one thing left to do now. The senior notes, you did it, and hey, you proved yourself to be pretty dang useful around in the forum, too. And Gruffin sort of considers that as we have a little diversion here into the pataphysical, where said, it's just a running gag. You're new, so you won't know, but basically a slightly vehement label we give to newbie drafts that had bizarre scenarios that would never happen in real life, like riding an anomaly down the hallways, or getting your dick stuck in an Aquafina water bottle. Fiction. Says, man, we work at a company locking up abominations and concepts, and I still have no clue what the fuck you just said. Story writers? So, they're a little back and forth banter, but Gruffin keeps thinking about this thing that he just said. You proved yourself to be pretty useful in the forum. Starts writing out a note. Says, hello, researcher Kiryu. I would like to... And then we have our final little break here. Little back and forth between Gruffin and researcher Zin, where she welcomes him to the Butterfly Squad roster. All in all, I found this to be a very entertaining little tale. Is it self-indulgent? Yeah, absolutely. But what I like about it is the sort of blending of our writing process with in-universe justifications for it in ways that seem, they don't. Okay, if you're doing something in a job like the Foundation and you have all of these different things that are, world ending, bizarre, arcane, whatever, and the method to keep you from getting burnt out is to go about making the case files on these things entertaining. It's not the most far-fetched thing in the world, is it? So on that note, I really do enjoy what this thing kind of tried to do as far as blurring the lines, and this was a +1 from me. All right, let's go to voicemail here. What do we got?
Hey, is this the number for Shorty's Discount Heads? This is Maurice. I'm out back with the truck. I have them fresh heads you guys ordered for your 2 for $25 sale. You want that I put this sack up against the door or what? Come on back here and unlock it.
Huh, interesting. Maurice, sorry about that. What else have we got?
This is a notice from the Chinese voice department. Start recording now.
您一下业务出现违规异常，了解详情请按0，由华语客服为您服务。
Fascinating. I don't speak Chinese. Hey, so mailbag time. AIS Mallard says, a number of links and site resources are dedicated to helping aspiring authors write first-time works. Seems we were just discussing that. However, a significant percentage of threads in I&B misunderstand the need for concept critique. If you could ignore technical restraints and remake the forum however you wanted, how would you better represent the drafting process in the forum's design? I would probably begin with something resembling a test to check on a couple of things: your ability to properly construct sentences, your ability to understand kind of what we're up to and understand potential pitfalls, maybe explain, hey, which of these is not recommended that you try, that sort of thing. Begin with that, and perhaps we could set up something so things are almost like anonymously done, like a blind system where people can submit pitches and get sort of anonymously upvoted or like endorsed in a way that people don't have to go really look for it. They can go see them all in one spot and say, yeah, I like that one. I like that one. I'm going to upvote these and endorse them. I'd like to see them. And that could basically function as a green light. And then the actual draft process, though, I think is what it is. I don't think there's a ton that we can do to change that loop of get the sandbox link, put it up there, go shop it around, let people see it, because it's, even if there is a way to like make it to where the user doesn't have to do as much, the fact is a lot of people will go put a draft up and then abandon it. And, they will not take any of the feedback that they got because they basically got the draft up and it wasn't like everybody going, oh, this is great, just post it. Once it's like, oh, I have to work and I have to change things that I like because other people don't seem to like that. A lot of people just sort of give it up right then and there. So the draft process, I'm not sure what sort of refinements we could really do, and it's something that I think would be a topic better suited for the actual site crit team. But unlocking the ability to do it, to access the whole system through something resembling a test, I would definitely want to investigate it. I know Kingdom of Loathing, it's a fun sort of little thing. If you go look it up, little role-playing game of sorts. To access the chat, you have to pass a spelling and grammar test, which actually did an awesome job. It made the chat in there much more entertaining and full of people that I actually would want to hold a conversation with. So I've seen things along those lines work before. And in the same way that we have a passcode to, prevent just anybody from joining the site, where they have to put in at least a modicum of effort into reading the rules before they can join, having something along those lines to further make sure that the user is appropriately invested and willing to work with us before we have our users and the Butterfly Squad, all of the people that donate their time to improve others, to make sure their time is being sort of smartly invested in people that have a chance of making a quality work out of it. So after 3 days of recording, we're done with this thing. I'm really apologize for how long it took to get this thing out there. I'm still not feeling great. It's Monday. We've finished recording, and I'm still not at 100% here, but we're through. We're done with it. So apologies. I know for sure this wasn't the best I've ever done as far as sound quality, but we'll survive. We'll move on to week 39, September 27th. If you thought this show was worth $1, which I would understand if you didn't this time around, but if you did, patreon.com/scpcafe is the best way to do exactly that. I'll see you guys later. Keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you on the other side.